So when I went to visit my mom in Sierra Leone, I got to see her living in her house. It was like really sad. They basically had like beds on the floor. It was like dirt floor. It was just like, I was like, wow, this is not the best way of living.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of AdoptedGals podcast. Today's episode is a little personal.
Yes, so today it's going to be very personal conversation, like Fatmata said. We're going to be talking about our first time reconnecting with our biological parents and family in Sierra Leone. So if you're adopted and you're watching this and you have had that opportunity, you're fortunate actually to have that opportunity to meet your biological parents, you know that it's a very surreal feeling. There's a lot of emotions that come with that experience. There is a lot of like questioning, a lot of maybe like anxiousness that might come. And so we're going to talk about some of the experiences that we had when we met our biological parents, how that felt, and what the takeaway was after we did like leave um, our parents and came back to America.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm going to get emotional in this episode because going back and seeing my family personally was so emotional. It was so surreal. I went back when I was 14 years old. So that was years ago and I haven't been back. And I've been pushing really hard to like figure out how to go back because I feel like I need to go back older. You know, I'm 28 now and I feel like the experience is going to be different. But when I was 14, my parents decided, okay, well, it's time to take her back to her birth country to see her family, to let them know she's alive and well and she's doing well. You know, this is, just kind of connect. And I remember just being so excited and anxious at the same time because I'm like, what if, like they don't remember me in a way like that? I want, them to remember me. And of course, there was a language barrier because I had completely forgotten my language, my birth language. Because because I'm living in a world where nobody spoke my language. And I remember going back and I remember this one memory that always sticks with me and is so deeply ingrained in my brain. And I feel like it happened like yesterday. I remember we were like on the side of the streets of the road, meeting up with my mother was there, my father was there. My siblings were in another area, but I'll get to that later. And I remember seeing my mother and she looked at me, I looked at her and we hugged each other. And before we even hugged each other, she just started just sobbing, just completely sobbing. And she looked at me like, who is the stranger? Like,
Yeah.
she's like, and I left when I was 9, and now like in Sierra Leone at that age, you're kind of considered as grown. And she's just looking at me. She knows I have the face of her daughter,
Right.
but she's different. And it's like there was just strangeness between us that we just didn't know each other. And it was so heartbreaking. I started crying because I wanted to tell her everything. Right there and then, I wanted to just tell her everything about my life, but I couldn't because the language barrier. And we just stood there and we just hugged each other and it was such a surreal feeling. And it makes me so sad. Like, it was sad, it was happy, it was I don't know if that was how it was for you, Hawa, but it was surreal. It was heartbreaking. And I wish I kept my language at that time because we had a translator. And I feel like with translators are not going to get the emotions that you want to convey to a person because they're just there to just say, the words without emotion. And it was hard. And it was just like, I missed her so much. Oh my God, I love that woman. I will always love that woman to the day I die. And so they say I miss my mother. And it's Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day to mothers
Happy
out there.
Mother's Day. Yeah, that's a good point.
But I guess this episode was perfect for that. But I don't know how it was for you when you saw your mother, Hawa.
Yeah, for me, I can speak on both the experiences of like meeting my birth mom and my birth dad, and it was two complete different experiences, I think. For my birth mom, I could totally relate to you. There was this feeling of like strangeness, like I don't remember the exact moment that I met my mom.
Mm.
But one thing I will say, my memories of my mom from being young and living with her when I was in Sierra Leone was that she was kind of like a very strict mom.
Mhm.
I was always getting in trouble. She was kind of like a stickler for rules and whatnot. And so I had in my mind, oh, I'm going to meet this woman that's super hard, super tough, and
Mhm.
because that's what I remembered of her. But of course, I remembered her being loving as well, right? And so when I
Mhm.
actually got to meet her, this lady is like super tiny. She's like 5 foot
Mhm.
three, and
Mhm.
I'm like towering over her. I'm 5'9" and a half,
Mhm.
and she's super like small, petite, and just super gentle, very sweet. Um,
Mhm.
but I did observe, like, as far as emotion, like, there wasn't a lot of emotion from my end, like, as far as like crying or anything like that. I was just kind of
Mhm.
in full observer mode. I feel like I was
Mhm.
almost looking at it from like a bird's eye view, where
Mhm.
I was looking in on what was going on as an observer,
Mhm.
not really fully being in the moment. And
Mhm.
I remember, like you said, feeling like strangers and just kind of like looking at each other. Like I can see her every now and then catching glimpses at me while I'm like talking
Mhm.
to somebody else. And she's probably
Yeah.
trying to wrap in her brain that I'm like her daughter, you know what I mean? And how
Mhm.
time flew by so much. Um, and I remember feeling very nervous and like touching her and having
Mhm.
physical connection. It felt like,
Mhm.
this is gonna sound kind of weird, but it felt like a foreign body that
Mm.
I didn't have permission to really touch and
Mm.
like really like fully feel everything. It felt like um almost in a way, like, I don't know, it's like I'm supposed to feel all these feelings, but like it didn't come
Mhm.
all at once. So I did kind of feel bad about that. I felt a bit of guilt, like, oh, this is my mom. Like, I'm supposed to be
Mm.
crying. I'm supposed to be like hugging her and jumping up and down. But I was very
Mhm.
reserved and I was very hesitant. I think that's what it is. I was very hesitant.
Mhm.
It felt
Which
like I
is
wasn't,
understandable. Which is
yeah,
understandable.
yeah, I felt like I wasn't really supposed to like touch her and all that kind of stuff. And I remember there was actually a moment when I was in my hotel room. She ended up like, uh, and funny story, actually, the person who owned the hotel I was staying at, he actually ended up being like my uncle or something like that. It's
Really?
like everybody's kind of like related with each other. He was like, "Oh, what's your last name?" I'm like, Vandy. He was like, "Oh, Vandy, that's my brothers, sisters." And I was like, "Oh, wow, that's kind of cool." Um, but when we were staying at the hotel, my mom actually ended up staying. She slept in the same bed with me, and that was like,
Really? Oh
yeah,
my
and that was a
gosh.
very interesting experience because
Yeah.
on the one hand, my body was kind of like retaliating the idea. It's kind of like this stranger is like imposing into my personal space. And then
Mhm.
another part was of me was like, I was very curious. Like I wanted to kind of like touch her and see how she felt. And like she was so
Mhm.
tiny and fragile, her bones were so tiny. I'm like, how did I come out of her? You know, just
Mhm.
all these different questions started popping up, and I started being really curious. And I'm sure she felt the same way too. And
Mhm.
I remember like me feeling kind of awkward of like even being naked around her, even though she's my
Yeah.
mom. You know, like
Yeah.
all those experiences that you have with your mom, for example, when you're younger, we didn't get to have that. We skipped all of that.
Yeah.
And you know, even with my adoptive mom, like when I was younger, I felt very uncomfortable being naked around her. Um,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
same thing with my biological mom, you know, just stuff like
Mhm.
that where I observed. And
Mhm.
with my dad, on the other hand, it was a different experience. My mom, she knows a little bit of English, but it's very broken. So
Mhm.
there was a huge language barrier, as you already know. But my
Mhm.
mom really went above and beyond to really try to make me
Mhm.
like feel like she was welcoming me in. You know, she wanted
Yeah.
to hang out with me. She wanted to cook for me. She went shopping. She even went to like the market and like the hotel guy, he asked her to go get like monkeys or something to eat.
Oh
So
my
she went
gosh.
into like the jungles or whatever. And she ended up, so monkeys, eating monkeys is kind of like a delicacy in Sierra Leone.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, I didn't eat it, but that's like some people eat it, some tribes,
Yeah.
eat it, but others don't.
We've
But
probably had it. We've probably had monkey at some
oh,
point.
I've definitely had monkey meat in the past for sure.
Mhm.
Like that's not even gonna deny it. But so yeah, so my mom went above and beyond, and my dad, on the other hand, was a different experience because on the one hand, my dad had health issues; he's blind.
Mhm.
So when I left Sierra Leone,
Mhm.
was able to see me, but he was starting to have
Mm.
vision like problems. Then when I came back, his all his vision was gone, right? So he was
Oh,
completely blind. So it was sad in the fact that he couldn't see me anymore. He couldn't see
yeah.
the woman that I had become. He could only hear me, right? And thank God, fortunately, he's very educated. When you
Mhm.
talk to this man, you would think you're talking to someone who is in politics in America or
Mhm.
something. Like he's very educated, very well aware, can have
Mhm.
conversations about various different types of topics. Um, so I think we were able to bond through just like talking, not a lot of touching. Again, I still had that feeling of like I'm not allowed to touch. I'm not allowed
Yeah.
to get really close. Um, and he was so sweet. My dad is very sweet. He, even though he's blind, he's like taking care of like other kids who were like orphans, in the village. Like he just took them in and he
Mhm.
adopted some other girl. And like he's doing all this, taking care of all these kids while he's blind. He can barely take care of himself.
Mhm.
So, um, yeah, it was a very surreal moment. And I really want to go back.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
do too. Like, yeah, my meeting my father was a little different. It wasn't as emotional. He was more
Mhm.
like, wow, I cannot believe. Like I hugged my father. He hugged me right away,
Yeah.
and I just like when you go back, it's like they look different. They just look so different
Yeah,
in
it does. Yeah.
how they look. And I remember just hugging him, and he gave me his hat. He was wearing this hat. He was wearing this hat that he had on, and it matched the shirt that he was wearing. And he actually gave it to me, and I brought it. I brought it home with me. Um, I don't know what happened to that hat, but it was such a beautiful homecoming. And then I met my siblings, my aunties, my uncles,
Oh,
and
yeah.
everybody. Yeah, and that's one thing I got to say about the whole trip. It was so welcoming. I felt so welcomed. I felt like a celebrity.
I know,
For
me
those of you,
too. I was
for
like,
those of you,
don't
for
touch
those of
me.
you who understand, like when it comes to going back to third world countries that are impoverished, and you who lives a more a country like the States and or UK, wherever, and you go back, they look at you like you're like a fucking god because you're living this dream that they want to dream. Like they look at America like it's heaven.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I remember just him giving me this hat, and yeah, it was really hard for me. I came back. I remember going back to the hotel and I cried my eyes out. And my mom, my parents, they didn't spend the night with me like your mom did. I was with my birth family. I mean, my adopted family, um, and my adoptive parents were very supportive of the whole trip too. It was weird, not I wouldn't say weird. It was interesting watching the two of them interact because during that time I wasn't sure how to accept that I can have two sets of parents and that I can love both. During that time, I feel like I only had to love the other in order to survive my world, but which wasn't the truth. But it was surreal watching them interact. It's like I have two sets of parents and
Yeah.
that love me, that care about me. So I was, during that time, I was like a very lucky girl to have that, and the joys and the welcome that I felt from my aunties, my uncles, and my sisters, and showing them the pictures and what my life has become. And I also felt a sense of guilt as well. I felt a sense of guilt, and that added to being emotional because it's like I feel like I'm living such a beautiful life and you guys are not. And I felt a little bit of jealousy too, especially from my aunt. My aunt was like on me, like you should have brought more money, you should have brought more of this, you should have brought more of that. Like you're living this luxurious life and you're coming back to rub it in our face. And I'm like, that's not what it is. And I was young and I could
Yeah, you're
understand
like
where she was
15
coming.
years old.
Yeah, I mean, she was, that's how it is over there. But Yeah, it was definitely emotional, but I got to go back as an adult for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And meeting my extended family was like very nice. The thing about Sierra Leone, our people are very family oriented and community oriented. They want
Hmm.
you to meet everybody
Hmm.
that's part of your family tree.
Everybody is your aunt and uncle, even if they're not related to you by blood.
Even if they're not related to you, they were there for you when you were a year and a half years old. They were there
Hmm.
with you for 3 months. So you have to meet them. You have
Hmm.
to, you don't have to necessarily give them money. You have to spend time with them. They have to see that you grew up to be, this woman, that
Yeah.
is doing good for herself. So everything is very family oriented, and I think that's one thing I can't appreciate about Sierra Leone is, in America, it's kind of opposite in a way that people really tend to really care only about like their immediate
Yeah.
family. That's the people that they pay a lot of attention to, and then they see their extended family maybe once a year or whatever, right? And in
Mhm.
Sierra Leone, it's like everyone is very much like ingrained with each other in the community. So I do appreciate that. It does there's a lot of responsibilities that come with that, right? Because
Mhm.
everyone has to take care of each other, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the pressure that was put on us after we got adopted is like, hey, you're expected to take care of this, not only your immediate family, but we're going to connect you with all these different, your aunts, your uncles, your second cousins, and
Mhm.
it's nice if you're able to give them money or give something back to them. So
Mhm.
sometimes whenever my birth family, like they're like, oh, we want to give you this person's number, I'm like, please, no, no, no,
No,
please don't.
no, that's
Please
okay.
do not. It's okay. Like I can love them from afar because I
Yeah.
already know they're gonna start asking me for money.
Mhm.
First they'll start out pleasant and nice, then they'll start opening up about all the problems that they're having and all of that. So and of course I'm gonna feel bad about it because I understand what they're going through, because I
Mhm.
went through that. And that's why I'm trying to do better for my birth family. And one thing I will say, meeting my birth family, I think made it um, almost like a non-negotiable to want to do better for my family.
Mhm.
Because when you get adopted when you're young, you don't have that direct connection with your family. You don't get to see what they're going through, their experiences,
Mhm.
the love they had for you, and the love they continue to have for you. You have that barrier, right? And so that barrier that you have between them, because you haven't seen them as an adult, right, where you have more awareness, you just remember them from being a
Mhm.
child and, oh, they took care of me, so they should be able to take care of themselves. They're okay. But when you're an adult and you go and you see how they're living, at least for me, I was like, I have to do like better for them because this is their reality every single day. And
Mhm.
I'm in America and
Mhm.
my reality is tough too, right? But I have more opportunities to be
Yeah.
able to do well by them because they did so much sacrifice for me and they continue to do so. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I don't know, did you kind of feel that a little bit? I mean, I know you were young when you went too. I
I mean,
went when I was like
yeah.
19 or 20. So I don't know if that
Yeah,
was a
the
different
guilt was definitely there. The guilt was definitely there, and I think my parents, my adoptive parents, also felt that guilt because after they adopted me, they did help my family for the longest time when it comes to schooling, medical bills, and housing. They helped them. The guilt was there for sure, and the guilt is still here for sure. So that's why I do still help my family, sending them money whenever I can. Because at the end of the day, like you said, we are living in a better world than they are. So it's if you have the money, like $10 can go really far over there. So yeah,
Right.
so yeah, I've seen them. I'm like, I definitely know I need to do better. And that's the goal, to just strive to make money, to have a good income, have a good job so you can like help, our birth families. That's always been my goal. But yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely get it.
And I think a lot of times, because I think our adoptive family don't usually expect a lot out of us in the financial aspect. You know what I
No,
mean?
I don't.
So
Oh, is you our adoptive family? I thought you said our
no,
birth. I was
adoptive
about to
family.
say,
I mean,
hold on.
obviously that's
Yeah.
a blanket statement as well. That's not necessarily the case for every single
Yeah.
adoptive parent and child
Hmm.
dynamic, but that is the case for me, and I think also Fatmata's.
Hmm.
And obviously, when they get older, they'll expect me to be there a little bit more in support.
Hmm.
But as of right now, they don't really. They've got things figured out, and so
Hmm.
naturally, as a daughter, as a child of a parent, you want to give back to your parents, whether that be your biological or your adopted, right? And so for
Mhm,
us, we've been in a position where we can just kind of focus on one family, which is our birth family, versus having to support both our adopted and our birth family.
mhm,
And one thing I'll say, something that did make me very sad was, um, you know, I one of the kids that got adopted from our orphanage,
mhm,
her mom, her birth mom, was actually really good friends with my birth mom, and they lived in the same like compound, and they, were very good friends. And so when I went to visit my mom in Sierra Leone, I got to see her living in her house. It was like really sad. They basically had like beds on the floor. It was like dirt floor. It was just like I was like, wow, this is not the best way of living. I know that's their kind of that's what's normal for them. That's
mhm,
normalized. But just based on when I lived out here in America, I was like, wow, that's not really good. But when I was there, I met this lady who was my mom's friend, whose
mhm,
biological daughter ended up getting adopted and moved to like Minnesota or something.
mhm,
And this lady had so many health issues and conditions, and her leg was just like so swollen and big, both of her legs. She could barely even stand up,
mm,
you know? And she was like very overweight. She's always been a little bit heavier, but she was very overweight at this point. She was losing hair. Like it was just really sad because when I was in Sierra Leone before I got adopted, I saw her and she was very full of life, relatively healthy, and but now she's like kind of um, just seems like her condition is just going like it's getting worse and
mhm,
worse. And no one knows what really was the problem, as most health issues in Sierra Leone. And I remember feeling like, damn, like I wish the adoptive parents of this girl in America and this girl, like maybe they could see how this lady is living now and want
mhm.
to do a little bit for them,
Yeah.
And I remember this lady, she was like, please send this message to my daughter when you get to
Mhm,
America. And she wrote this like beautiful message. And her daughter is younger than us. She's like maybe
mhm.
5 years, maybe 3 to 5 years younger than us.
And
And I
her
remember I did
adoptive
send.
parents are not doing anything to help the birth mother?
It didn't seem so. And then a few years later, I found out the mom had passed away. And yeah, it made me so sad. And I think that was like reality for me, where I was like, damn, I'm gonna really try to do everything I can without killing myself, of course,
Mhm,
to be able to give back a little here and there. You know what I mean? Um, because the reality is they can just drop dead at any minute, any day, like the
mhm,
way that they're living. So,
mhm,
um, so yeah, so that was just like kind of like a reality
mhm.
shocker for me.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that I'm expected to give money back.
Yeah.
It's just like going back, I saw that what they were living through. So, as much as I wanted the experience to just be lovely roses and butterflies, there was so many different complexities of the
Yeah.
situation and actually meeting my biological family. There was that
Yeah.
emotional, happy, giddy feeling, and then there was the feeling of like, okay, I have to give back. But I know my family, they were trying to like not make it seem like, oh, you have to give this. You know what I mean? But it was an underlining kind of expectation.
Yeah, like this is like that can be very emotional. So if you are an adoptive parent watching this right now and you are considering taking your children back to where they're from to see their family,
Mm,
I will highly encourage you and be prepared for all different types of emotions and kind
yeah,
of create this doorway to that leeway to be super supportive to your adopted child. And if they seem like they're pulling away from you during that time, just kind of give them some space and
yeah,
ask them if they want to
definitely.
talk to you about whatever they're feeling. If they want to talk about it, give them the space to talk about it. If they don't want to talk about it, then give them some time. And it's a process. Even after they come back from that visit, it's going to be a different process. They might have shut down from coming back to the states or wherever you guys live. They're going
Mhm.
to experience those emotions where they change. And that change is coming from grieving again, because the first time they left, they were grieving losing everything, and then it just kind of like happened again. So those wounds are going to get reopened. So I just kind of want to say that so you guys are aware of what, might come up, different type of emotions. If you can put them in therapy, when they come back home, put them in therapy. And if they need time, give them time. Don't get angry or mad at them if they pull away from you, or if you feel like they don't want you as parents, or sorry, excuse me. That's not what it is. They're just processing a lot of emotions.
Yeah, and I highly recommend for you to go with your child as they're
Hmm.
experiencing this.
Hmm.
Um, first time meeting their biological parent. I actually ended up going by myself. However, I have been in before going back, I had been in communication with my birth family for a very long time, since
Hmm.
I basically got adopted for years.
Hmm.
And I also had someone in Sierra Leone who was a tour guide, was a tour
Hmm.
guide for my adoptive parents when they came to Sierra Leone. He was
Hmm.
in the orphanage. So I knew him. I was very comfortable to him. I knew he was safe, could show
Hmm.
me around. So he was basically with me 24/7, in replacement of my parents being there. But I definitely recommend that you be there as a parent. I think it'll
Yeah.
also just be a unique experience for you as well as adoptive parent
Hmm.
to go through this with your adoptive child. And this can be another bonding experience for both of you.
Hmm.
Thank you so
Okay.
much, you guys, for watching this video. If you know anybody that is interested in becoming, that is adoptive, especially transracially adopted, and they have a story they want to share, please let them know that we are open to having new guests on our podcast. They can email us. And then, of course, don't forget to like, to subscribe, to share this video and any of the other videos that you like from us, and spread the word about adoptive gals.
Yes. Thank you.
All right,
Have a good
bye
day.
guys.
Bye.